right, really ambitious cinematography for my man Nigel Goodwin over there. All right, so here we are in the third stage of these horror lectures and making these horror films, and like, let's see if we can agree that what is the worst thing of any horror film that usually happens? Like
You can't escape.
no, like
Well,
what always from the directing standpoint, what always goes wrong in disappointment in the horror film?
If it turns out funny.
Turns out funny, but the biggest one is the ending.
Okay.
How many times have you been disappointed by the ending of horror films? Right?
That it wasn't scary enough.
Well, not just that it wasn't scary enough, it's like, what the hell was that? You know what I mean? It's like, it got a lot of shocks, a lot of scares throughout the movie. I'm chilling with my girl here, she's screaming, that's all great, but then the ending is disappointing. Right? It kind of like, it just kind of, the consequence of it just kind of falls flat. You know, they didn't think about, oh, how are we going to end this? They only thought about, how can we scare somebody? How can we create a new inventive psycho killer, stalker, whatever, anything like that. But mainly, it falls apart in the end. So I thought that with this course that we're focusing on horror films, that maybe we could do a section or film which we focuses on that, which I call consequence, right? So like the next film will be consequences. So what do we have so far? We got phobias. So we looked at fear. We explored fear from very different angles. And then the second film was about suspense, the running clock, pacing, tension, atmosphere. So now this third one would be focusing on the endings. Kind of like when we had the ending segments, remember, like Williams World or whatever, all the ending films we made. But this one will be like in the horror engines, consequence. You know, how can we build to something and make it satisfactory, right? So again, it's kind of like you might say, well, you know, how do we do that when we don't have the whole rest of the film for people to have seen? But that's the whole point, is just that what I just said was they spend a lot of time on the first and second act of film and they let the third act fall apart. So what I'm asking you to do is kind of like look at an idea around the third act, mainly around the resolution, the consequence. How do you resolve a situation in a horror film and everything? And so get you to just kind of like focus on that last scene, right? So what happened when we did endings before with the visual grammar courses is just that we did openings and we did endings. And what I was trying to get people to focus on was opening the film, that's how you grab people, right? You know, your world, you build a world, the world construction, you build characters, and you just set the tone for what people are going to watch. And then I thought it was interesting when we do endings where it's like, okay, now how does all of that end? But what people tended to do was they didn't tend to bring the two together. Like only like one person, man Nigel over there, figured, okay, look, I'm going to do a story of Williams World. So I'm going to use this as an example. So his character was William, who was an agoraphobic. Now, he thought, okay, this might be interesting. Show a man isolated in a room for a long period of time against his will. Which sounded a lot like Old Boy. Yeah, if anybody's seen that. And I thought, oh, this could be really cool, because maybe William could be like this, you know, he could build his body, and like, you could be like, don't mess with him, you know? We had another actor come in, and he was like his handler and stuff. And that's where the opening was, is that William was like, sets up the point that, you've had me in this room against my will, and I don't like that, right? And then it's kind of like, ooh, what's going to happen now, right? So then the film was supposed to go forth, right? And then we were supposed to jump right past the second act to the ending. So then, so Nigel chose the ending to be William still in the room, and his daughter comes to get him out. And they just walk out the door. He says, they wouldn't let me see you, right? There's some tension, there's some love, there's some music in it. And then it was kind of like, what the hell am I watching? Right? Because, one, what is the tone of this film? What is it supposed to be? Now, I know what I wanted it to be, and it's not up to me. But this is the problem with your audience. Your audience wants your film to be something. You as a filmmaker want to say something, but this is where you're not that important. Because your job as a director is to deliver an exciting and interesting story, right? If you were directing someone else's story, your job as a director is to interpret that story. That means, what is the tone of that story going to be? Is it going to be a comedy? Is it going to be horror? Is it going to be adventure? And you have to have a style and technique that's going to establish that. Everybody understand what I mean by that? So you can't go about, what was my funny thing I've always said about style and technique was, like if a director felt his style and technique was clown and robots, right? And he's like, that's what I do, that's what I like, that's what I'm going to make. And you have to suffer that because you asked me to do this for free. Then you shouldn't complain that you got a film full of clowns and robots because he told you what his style and technique is and he told you what he was going to do. So in that case, this is an example of a director who does what he wants, what they call an auteur, like a Hitchcock or a Truffaut. He does what he wants and alienates a good 30 to 50 to 80% of his audience.
You still talking about me?
No, I'm talking about the auteur and the beard stroker who makes his own films for himself. That's not what this is about. I'm using that as an example of like when your storyline was in one way, it infused an idea that this could be cool. Like William could break out, he could or he could be holed up like Charles Bronson in Death Hunt. You know, you can have like cop cars and ambulances all outside and everything. And I'm like, William, come on out, you know? And he's like, I'm not coming out until you bring me my daughter. And then all of a sudden, William, and they can't get him out. And then all of a sudden there's a knock on the door and it's like, Daddy, it's me. Right? Then she comes in. And we was all bloody and covered in mud. And he's like, they wouldn't let me see you. Watch this film.
It's like that, but without the cop cars.
Yeah. They wouldn't let me see you. Right? And then so she's like, I know, I'm here now, let's go. And when she takes him out, it's like taking out Bruce Lee in Chinese Connection. Right? He walks out there, and then all of a sudden he sees a line of cops and paparazzi, and he's like, you all betrayed me. That's how William walks out that door with his daughter. Nigel Adams walks out into the light, and then it's like, what the hell? Right? Meaning, I get nothing as the audience. He gets everything as a filmmaker. That's what I wanted to make. Right? But to me, it says nothing. To him, it says everything. This is what I'm trying to say is what the problem with most horror films is. They do what they want. They figure they thrill you, scare you, get some naked bodies, all that other kind of stuff. And the audience is dissatisfied. This is what I want you to focus on and not trying to do. That, like, you have to have the bang, the crescendo of an idea that makes sense. And that's why I call it the consequence. There has to be a consequence that you have to think, what is it that I want to do? You know? So, types of consequences or endings that you could be looking at when it comes down to the horror movie tropes. Right? Throw some out before I do. And the horror movie ending, anybody?
I was playing around with the idea of someone being pursued and they can't get away, and they're chased for some time.
Yeah, this is your idea, that but I meant.
And then they wake up and thank God it's only a nightmare. At which point there's a look of horror in his face as he looks up. I want to use that toy shot, and the guy stood there with an hatchet.
Yeah.
So he hasn't escaped the dream.
Yeah. No, that's your idea. I know that. I mean, we'll talk about your idea, but I meant like as a horror movies, have you seen like a trope that we can look at as far as consequence? For example, that idea that you just said, that's an ending from Prince of Darkness, John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness. You ever see it?
No.
Well, okay, great movie. John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness, you know, they go through this whole thing, end of the world, Jesus is an alien, digibite, and like, Jameson Parker, with his whole Harry Reams mustache, is the hero and one of the only survivors of the night. Yeah? And then, like, you know, he wakes up in the morning and it's like, was it all a dream? Right? And because there's these flashes of the future, flash messages of the future. And so he wakes up in bed and then, like, he turns over and there's a scary woman in his bed wall with his crusted face, right? So we get what is called, like, the final shock, which is what they do in a lot of horror movies, right? And then he's like, it was all a dream and stuff. And music swells. And then he stands up, you know, and he looks in the mirror because it's about the mirror dimension. And then he looks into the mirror and then, you know, kind of like looks at his face because it's he the one who's sending himself messages from the future. All right, and he goes towards the mirror and it cuts. Audience goes, what the hell was that? What happened? Now, in one of the trailers for the movie, right, it was a deleted scene where they had the mirror and all of a sudden a hand juts out of the mirror, right? Like they grab him. Now, that probably was the actual ending. And then they just said, oh no, either it's too scary or too much or whatever, because that's what happens when the suits get involved, right? And then they decided to just cut the movie off, as opposed to having a hand jut out the camera. What would the audience want? Hand jutting out at the camera. I mean, coming out of this mirror. Now, another example of an ending like that. Phantasm. Anybody ever see it? I'm talking about the original. That's what I'm talking about, the original in the 70s. Now, remember the end of Phantasm?
Can't remember.
Okay, the end of Phantasm is about a little boy and his brother, you know, trying to fight this tall man, Angus Scrim. And he's always going, boy, right? You know, it's like he walks slowly, chasing his kid through cemeteries and everything else like that. And, you know, like, they think they get away. They think they stop the alien invasion of dwarves or Ewoks or whatever those Jawas from Star Wars are, right? And kid wakes up, right? Here's his brother, you know, downstairs. So, hey, my brother is alive. It's cool, because clearly a dream. And then all of a sudden, he turns like that wet pan, and he screams standing there going, boy. And then other hands juts out of the mirror and pulls the kid into the mirror and cut, right? Yeah. Remember that now?
Remember it now, yeah.
So, I mean, like, that's, so we get that shock ending, which is good. Right? And everything like that. It's satisfying. When you don't have it, it doesn't release the endorphins. It doesn't have a catharsis. So that's what I'm trying to say is your consequence needs that. Right? You're thinking, oh, okay, all I need is like one shock, like one catharsis and stuff, you know, because I'll give you like one more, right? Since nobody's throwing them at me. Friday the 13th, right? The first one. Where the girl is in the lake after she chops off the mom's head, who actually is not Jason yet, and stuff like that. And, you know, and slow music playing, you know. Dun, 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 dun. Anyway, she's running her hand through the water. She's in the boat. Police car comes in the distance, you know, with its flashing lights. You know, she looks up at it. Cop comes out of the car and goes, don't even hear him because she's in a daze, right? And everything like that. And then, so she looks up, oh, it's the police. It's morning. It's daytime. I survived the night. Because that's a big trope. It's about surviving the night, you see, right? So I survived the night. This is great. And everything. And then, pacing. 1, 2, 3. Then the kid, all hard, disfigured young Jason, still in his 11-year-old state, you know, busted teeth, leaps up out of the water, and they grab the girl from behind and flips the boat over, right? And so we, the audience, is like, whoa, final shot, oh, you know, this is crazy, and everything like that. And this is bad. Jason's got her. There is a Jason. And then we cut to, she wakes up in the hospital. He's waking up from dream scraps. I mean, this is the serious 80s trope, right? But anyway, she wakes up in the hospital, and she tells the policeman, it's like, you know, what about the boy? He's like, we didn't see no boy. We just saw you flip over uncontrollably in a boat, right? Don't know how you did it backwards. It was amazing. Right? But we didn't see no boy. And she's like, then he's still there. Right? And then we cut to the lake. And as we push into the lake slowly, all of a sudden we get a ripple, like an air bubble ripple underneath. Boop. Chase the line. And then we get 13 horrible movies afterwards. It's true though, isn't it? But it still is the horror trope that works. It's a satisfactory, raised endorphins, cathartic ending, a consequence that means something to the audience more than it means to you as a filmmaker. So that's kind of like what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say is like you could just do one scene that will provide us with a shock, some type of catharsis that will be, oh, this is what I want, this is what's happening. And bringing us back to, say, your idea, right, which, wasn't supposed to be for this, it was supposed to be for one of the earlier films, but your idea of a person running and everything, it sounds like the Laura Mars idea I have, but anyway, your idea of a person running and then they stop and they run into themselves or something, like they turn, it's like, kind of like you said that person turns and there's a shock, right?
Yeah.
And everything else like that. But it's missing something. It's missing all those stuff that I just said, right? Around the fact that, you got the tension and the catharsis of the person running and everything else like that. But the whole thing about the person just turning, you know what I mean? That there's somebody there and it turns out to be a dream. Then what?
Catharsis is, we mean as in like an event taking place. Like,
Yeah, catharsis is like, like one of them Greek words like diegesis, right? Where it's like, not an event, it's more like a raised action that builds excitement, like more mainly in your audience. So like a cathartic feeling is like, I'm either really happy or I'm really afraid.
It's like a release, a release of
endorphins.
of tension.
Which is when I use the word endorphins, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, just using the word catharsis because it's nice. But yeah, that's what it is. It's kind of like you got to be able to think about how am I going to excite my audience more than my character? Because your character is not really in a state of catharsis. You want your audience to be in a state of catharsis. Does that make sense?
yeah.
That means that it's justified. We as a society are a society of murderers. Let me say that just like Donald Pleasance does, right? We're a society of murderers. Oh no, Hal Holbrook in The Fog. If anybody remember that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
When they had that 100-year celebration because the fog actually destroyed the pirate ship, and then he's like, we're actually honoring murderers, because as you already know, we as a society are a bunch of fence-sitting watchers. We're also hidden killers, which means that we watch action, horror, because we actually want to kill somebody, right? We can get away with it, right? So we love that kind of stuff. We love seeing people being chased and chopped up and beaten and all that kind of stuff. Can you tell me we don't? Right? That's what catharsis is. I don't have to go to jail for murder. I can just watch it on telly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, who wants to do that?
Nobody. But that's what it, so the catharsis is, yes, do it. Or even without it being murder, even Rocky, right? That final sequence in Rocky, man, when you get from the 7th to the 12th round, if you're not standing up punching air, right? Then there's not something human about you, right? But now, granted, you might feel, if you don't feel, you should feel that this might be a little bit difficult because those characters that I'm talking about, those examples of films that I'm talking about, the catharsis is earned. Do you know what I mean by that? What do I mean then if you're shaking your head and you know what I mean? Oh, then you don't know it? Okay.
No.
The catharsis is earned. What do I mean by that?
You gotta put the audience through a journey to get to that point.
There's my man. That's why he's fantastic. So you might think that me asking you to do a cathartic consequence film will be a little bit difficult because they didn't see everything that led up to it. But I disagree. As a filmmaker, I disagree, and this is why I keep trying to educate you on how you need to think. This is why I tell you how I think Williams' world didn't do what it should have done, is that we can build the blocks all we want, build the stairs up to all we want. The point is, I'm only asking you to take me to like the nearest steps at the top. I'm only asking you to take me to the block that you're gonna put up on the top. You as a filmmaker should know your whole film from beginning to end, right? So whether you wrote the script or read the script and you're interpreting the script and everything, you should know page 90 to page 100, this happens. And a lot of people, tend to shoot the end first or in the middle or whatever, but they know it. That means you have to lead your actors to that point. So all of this happened throughout the movie, right? You're in love, you're in hate, you're in pain, you're in vengeance. And this is the scene we're going to shoot today on day 12. So I'm asking you, as a filmmaker, to take your mindset to day 12, day 20, and to take your actor there too. And that's what you don't do, and that's what you didn't do, and that's what I'm talking about. Is that like day 20, when we're going to shoot that final sequence, should be the same as the use of the same energy as you used on day 1, day 3 when you had the new scene, and all that kind of stuff. You should have that same energy. So it doesn't matter, because it's all comes together in the edit. It doesn't matter what journey the audience was on. If you, as the filmmaker, the director, this is the whole point of this class, take your artist, actor, to that journey point. So at this point in time, this is what's happening. You're hanging from a thread, you're hiding under the spiral staircase, you're, running down a hall. But all of this stuff happens. And I need that to be in your body language, I need that to be in your face, I need that to be in your expression, right? I need the tremolo of your voice, right? All of that stuff. Because if you don't, the actor will go, yes, I'm running, I'm scared, I'm happy. Actually, I just ate. You want me to do what? Okay. I'm ready. I'm psyching myself up. Right? And if you allow that actor to do that, then there's something wrong with you. Right? So when they do it, you rehearse it, or you run through it. No, that's not what I want from you. I want you to do this. I need you to... Do I need to slap you? Do I need to shake you? What do I need to do for us, me, and you to be in sync for where I need your emotions to be right now? And that's why I think it's a good test for you as a director for this horror course. Is that for you to actually work on your own skills of convincing someone to be at the state that you need them to be, so that way the consequence of this film comes off the way it should. Does everybody understand what the point is?
Yeah,
it makes sense.
It's going to have some kind of symmetry to it, sort of build up to a final, a middle bit, and the beginning.
And you're going to shoot the final bit by knowing what the middle bit and the beginning is.
Yeah.
But if you know anything about filmmaking, you know that film is shot out of sequence. So the point is, it shouldn't matter whether you and that actor went on that journey, right? It should matter that you know what that journey is, what it feels like, what point you are when you're going to film it, so that way you can convince your actor, this is where we are, this is where we're going, boom. And don't just shoot it, right? You have to feel it. If they don't feel your passion and belief into what is happening, this is why people laugh. You know what I'm saying? So, it's a hard task. It could be a fun task, but it also should be one of those tasks that is like curious to you about, yeah, because if I could do this, then I could do anything. I could shoot the whole film, right? All you're asking me to do is communicate what I want effectively to my actors. You're asking me to put them into a state of being, and you ask me to jump right to the end of that state. Because we don't have time to shoot the whole movie, do we? That's all we do here is shoot scenes. So this is a key scene in a horror film that always goes wrong, which is why I said they always go wrong in the ending. So I'm asking you to focus on it. Make sense?
Yeah.
Well then, so I know you probably ain't got no ideas for that. That lasted. So we'll cut it off and then we'll work on those ideas. All right?